Hi long range hunting, and welcome back to episode 24 of our terminal ballistic testing, hunting versus match bullets. Now, welcome back everybody. I know I've had a break just due to hunting season and everything. I've talked about this with ballistic gel testing, but we're back at it again. I filmed 3 different tests this weekend. I did the DRT, I did the Barnes match burners, and the Sierra tipped Game Kings. So let's dive into it. Today we are covering DRT. These are the terminal shock. This is a lead-free option, which, you know, I get a lot of questions about, and it's kind of been a search to try to find a good alternative for those people who are stuck in places like California and can't use good bullets. Now, I don't recommend copper bullets. The reason being is the poor terminal ballistics, the potential issues you have that I've seen a lot both in my own hunting with solids and, you know, testing other people's experiences and just knowledge of bullets. There's so much misinformation, political and otherwise, out there of people just getting bad information. One is marketing, the other is just people repeating marketing without actually knowing what they're talking about. But the main reason is just they don't perform well. You know, we're not dealing with armored animals here. You don't need, you know, something that's going to blow through 10 feet of material, you know, and so they just, I know there's some that have tried different things as far as weakening it, you know, different size holes. They do all kinds of stuff to try to do it, but copper is much harder than lead. So this runs into issues on the terminal side. It also does on the gun side, because it doesn't, when it goes into that rifling, it's harder, so it doesn't collapse as much when you're digging into those rifling, and so it not only wears out your barrel faster, but can cause pressure issues. Now, there are some that will have bands around the bullet where it helps to reduce friction. They'll put coatings on it to try to aid in it, and I mean, you can get it to where they shoot well like that, but we're talking about the terminal side of it, and they're not good. You're limited on a lot of stuff because in order to get their weight, a lot of them are a lot longer, and so you end up with needing a faster twist rate, which could screw you depending on your rifle. You have to run lighter projectiles for caliber, and what I mean by that is if you have the whole spectrum, you're having to run the light end so you can increase that velocity to try to make up for it. So you have to push them really fast in order to get them to perform instead of regular, you know, performance ranges, just to get okay terminal ballistics or even poor terminal ballistics depending on the projectile you get. And then there's also that they're just stupid expensive, and I know people are going to jump on, they always do, the copper crowd does, and says, oh well, you just, you know, you're just cheap or this or that. I'm not cheap. If you look at the equipment I run, there's nothing cheap about it. I run the most expensive match bullets out there, and those are A-tips. Ran burgers, you know, I run a bunch of different stuff. I buy the top of the top. But there's a big difference between buying quality and paying for quality and paying overpriced junk. It's like if you get, let's say, a scope. Let's say you buy a really nice high-end scope. You know, let's say you pay $2,000 just as a ballpark for it. And then you find a cheap Chinese knockoff, and the cheap Chinese knockoff is 2-3 times more expensive. Well, the scope you bought, the good one, is worth its money. The other one is just overpriced. Now, I'm not saying copper bullets are like Chinese knockoffs. I'm just using this as a relatable example. So, you know, it's one of those things that you are spending a ton. There's some that are, you know, they go usually in boxes of 50, and normally you're paying 90 something bucks roughly. And so if you calculate that, you're looking at 180 bucks before tax or shipping or any of that. So you're talking a couple $100 per 100 bullets. And all you're getting is increased barrel wear and bad terminal ballistics. So, you know, when you go to hunt that hunt of a lifetime, that's why I don't recommend them, is guys go out and they get poor performance and they just screwed themselves on a hunt. So not something I recommend. I go all about, you know, good performance, accuracy, terminal ballistics, etc., and cost. So, you know, I'll pay for what's good. I won't pay for what's bad. All right, now the reason I touched on all that isn't to sit there and, you know, bash on copper bullets. It's showcasing the limitations of them and then showing you guys the difference. First things first, construction and design. This is a boat tail hollow point projectile and it is jacketed. Now, that's not something you see with monolithic, solid copper, etc. And it's really beneficial because it changes that necessary impact velocity and resistance. This is a powdered copper core that has been compressed. So basically they've compressed this powdered copper and stuck it inside. I'm not really sure about the whole process on that, but again, I'm not making the bullet. You know, from what I've heard, these are the best. Again, I reserve judgment until I've actually tested something. I've heard these are the best alternative one. But again, until I do something, I'm tested and actually get that, I'm not going to say anything. And so, but I mean, just based off the construction, it really, really does set it apart. Because with it being jacketed, and then that powdered core, it does compress more inside the rifling. So you're not getting that overpressure and friction. It's around the same length as any other, you know, 175 grain boat tail hollow point match bullet, you know, like Sierra Match Kings, all that. So you have your standard size and shape. The cost isn't too bad, especially for copper. I think I paid 90 bucks for these for 100 bullets, a box of 100. And so, I mean, you're looking, if you take another bullet that's say like 90 bucks per 50, it's half the cost of that. Now the company does claim 15 to 1600 feet per second for the minimum impact velocity on these. There's other copper ones that say it'll do that, which is a load. I'm not sure on these. I'm not going to speak until I do that. I do have a lot more testing to do with these. This is just one that I did. I'm going to load them up in the 300 Win Mag and we'll run high velocity on that. We'll also load them more in the 308 and stretch it out and really get those lower end velocities and find out. But until I test it, I'm not going to say what the minimum impact velocity is. I'm just going to go based off what this is so far. Now let's talk permanent wound cavity real quick. Now, this was at 2,426 feet per second, which is on the lower spectrum as far as copper bullets. Most copper bullets realistically have a minimum impact velocity for expansion performance around 2,200 feet per second. Now, there are those who claim otherwise, that it goes lower. No. Now, with these being designed differently, they claim 15 to 1,600 feet per second. So I'm not going to say what it is until I've actually tested it, and we're going to continue with that. But this is good wounding. Now, I want to bring something up just for comparison wise. We have what's called the pedals, and you know, you have that multi-directional wounding. That's a good thing. This shed weight, which you can see the pieces of core that have come off and gone through there, basically creating basically like a shotgun. You've got that blast of pieces going through there, and then you have that permanent wound cavity also. Now, when I measure permanent wound cavity, I don't care about the little excess pieces when it sheds. I only care about the maximum width of those petals. For this, it was 2 inches at maximum. Now, with a good lead core bullet like ELD Match, A-tips, Burger Hybrids, etc., what's going to happen is in order to shed weight, unlike this where it's just that core coming apart and going through, is that lead core projectile is actually going to expand really, really wide, and then those fragments are coming from the outer part. And so what it's doing is it's shedding those outer parts, which brings down the size, and then it keeps expanding, sheds, and just keeps doing that. as it goes through. Now, shedding weight like that not only allows for the most surface contact, the more trauma, but also allows for penetration. So you're getting the best of both worlds. Now, this sheds a little bit differently, but there's no doubt that it is effective how it did it. Just wanted to showcase the differences, but very, very good wound cavity for the type of bullet and the impact resistance. So, we'll keep testing, find out what that actual minimum impact velocity is, but really that's pretty nasty. You don't want to get hit by that. Now let's talk temporary wound cavity. Now that's that energy, that hydraulic shock, that hydrostatic shock. That's the energy transfer through, which energy is only a potential. Now we had a potential energy dump of 2,285 foot-pounds of energy. Something I really want to point out here before I show everything in slow motion is what it did to the gel block. Now this is not something I've ever seen with a copper projectile, and I've hunted with them. I've also done the testing, and so you learn how to compare the ballistic gel to real life and understanding what type of performance you're going to get. But with gelatin, normally it barely moves it. Sometimes it doesn't even move the gel block. These aren't exactly light, but what's happening is that bullet's just blowing right through. It's not dumping a whole lot of potential energy into the target. It's not really opening up wide. And so this was really shocking because when it hit, it literally flew. That's something I see with lead core bullets, which shows you're getting a good energy transfer, that good temporary wound cavity. I mean, at max, it's a very, very impressive wound cavity for both the impact velocity and that it's a copper projectile. Now, it did penetrate through all three. I had just had some little pieces of gel I set up for a catch block. It did go through the hide, the meat, the gel, and then it looks kind of weird because the other trash can I'm using, because everything else broke, is actually shorter, and so it caught the top of those gel blocks as it went out, but it penetrated through this gel block, set up for a deer, and then two partial pieces, and it left a pretty good permanent wound cavity. So it obviously allows you penetration as well as expansion and good trauma. That's kind of an issue with a lot of copper bullets, is over penetration, but it seems to be a pretty decent mixture between the two. In conclusion, these lived up to every hype I've heard about them. When you go to stack bullets on how they perform, I mean, you have on the top your lead core projectiles. That's going to give you the best terminal performance. On the bottom, you have your copper projectiles, and this lands right in the middle. This design, how it works, it's definitely the best copper projectile out there. Hands down, I've tested a ton of them. I've hunted with a bunch of them. Hands down, the best performance I've ever seen from a copper projectile. So, it's amazing that just a small company created something that's good. So for those in California places, where I have never really had a recommendation, this is it. I mean, I'm not sure about availability. I know they're a smaller company, so they don't have a lot of variety, but this is something I'd like to see more companies do moving forward, as far as getting away from just the solid copper and actually putting some kind of core in it to give you better terminal performance. So very, very impressed. I'm going to load them in the 300. I'm going to load some more in the 308, try to get the high side, and the low side. We had kind of a medium here as far as what I usually test, but quite honestly, it's very impressive. Never thought I'd say that about a copper projectile, non-lead, but it works well. Good job, DRT. So you guys can look them up and kind of, go from there on their website, but phenomenal bullet. If I had to hunt a place that didn't allow copper or didn't allow lead, these are what I'd run. So I stick with my lead core, but for testing purposes and seeing everything, these are impressive. And I've seen the results as far as animals too that have been shot with them. So comparing them, it's a very impressive bullet. Now we have more gel tests coming up. Don't worry, we have the ones I filmed this weekend was the Sierra Tip Game Kings, and the Barnes Match Burners, which has been a big request from a lot of people. This has all been filmed also by the new GoPro 10 I picked up. So if the audio is a little better, that's because it's got a directional mic. I got the media mod. I got the new 10 filming in 5.3K ultra high definition. I'm using my regular 9 as just a slow motion one for ballistics gel, and all my other filming will be with this. Unfortunately, normally I get a lot more as far as footage, like through the spotting scope. There was an accident with the tripod, and now I'm in need of a new tripod. So unfortunately I was down a tripod when it came to that, so I didn't get all my normal footage, but you got the important part, the gel. Now we're going to continue through all these. Everybody, I hope you enjoyed the episode. Thanks to all the new subscribers that have come. Everybody be safe out there. Happy hunting.
Hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and turn on notification bell so you won't miss out on any future video. And happy hunting!